The Baldwin RF-16, otherwise known as its much more flashy nickname, the Sharknose. After some not so good attempts by Baldwin to transition to diesel manufacturing, they finally got their footing heading into the 1950s, and to separate their newer, more reliable models from what came before, they conjured up a brand new style for their locomotives, Sharknoses, and the design that would come to be the bearer of that nickname began production in late 1950. The Road Freight 16, with its new styling, 1,625 horsepower, and actually reliable mechanics, would come to be one of Baldwin's most successful models. 3 railroads would order the Sharknose: the B&O, Pennsy, and the New York Central, totaling up to 160 units before production ended in mid-1953. The Sharks quickly earned a reputation for having dependable lugging power, being used on mostly long and heavy coal drags. They worked well in the 3 Class 1s for about 10 years, but as the 1960s rolled around, the problems began to show. With second-gen locomotives entering production, the railroads were becoming dissatisfied with the RF-16. The main problem was the fact that Baldwin insisted on keeping their own multiple-unit system, meaning that they wouldn't work with other manufacturers' models. And now that 1,600 horsepower wasn't all that much for a single unit, that meant their use was now extremely limited. The retirement of the Sharks began in 1962 on the B&O and ended with the New York Central in 1967. That year, 9 RF-16s from the NYC were sold to the Monongahela Railway. This second life wasn't to last though, as by 1974, after being picked off one by one, only 2 of the 9 units remained, leaving numbers 1205 and 1216 as the last remaining Sharks. Before they joined the rest of the examples of their model in the scrapyards, the Delaware and Hudson Railroad came in to save the units. Now painted up into D&H colors, they were used on passenger excursions and freight service. Eventually, they were picked up by a leasing company in 1978 and worked around Michigan on a few different railroads, until 1216 broke a crankshaft in 1982. They've been stored mostly out of sight since then, awaiting their hopeful restoration to bring the Sharks back to the water.